So I'm here where they're proposing the new soccer stadium at Roosevelt and Clark, and they're talking about multiple stadium venue, and I think both Sox Park and the soccer stadium can be here, and I think it would be the proper move to put it here right on the river, both Sox Park and the soccer stadium. And the funny thing is that will actually reduce, I think, help Sox Park with reducing the cost of building the new stadium here by building the soccer stadium first, because they have to develop the infrastructure and everything for the area. And here and you have the Roosevelt Collection right here, the Roosevelt Collection, and this would benefit greatly. The property will boom at the Roosevelt Collection, and this mall, and then this mall at Whole Foods, and this whole area around Canal Street, and then the new development going in the old post office would benefit. It would just bring a lot more economics to this area. And then there's Pacific Gardens Mission that's down the street. They would benefit. And then the Chicago Metro, the rail yard, all that land is going to go up in value greatly, truly. And then they have the mall over here. So this mall, all this real estate will get a massive bump in value. So starting with the first stadium and then moving in the second stadium. But to do the first stadium, they have to build out all the infrastructure. And since you're building the first stadium, build out the infrastructure to support the development of an additional stadium or an additional development. So down the street here, you have Urban Ministries, Pacific Gardens, and their property will go up in value. You have this mall, this Jewel. So if you're leasing here, eventually the landlord is going to charge you a higher price for the lease. But if you're owning, your property will have great equity appreciation. So down here, you have Pacific Gardens, and here, all this labor and everything that's going into the stadium, right here, you have the Mission right here, and they can actually be part of the deal with the new stadium, employing labor and everything else, so they can do job training, providing construction people, and all kinds of labor, and then permanent labor to the stadium. So again, it can take this and all this land that they own, all this is going to take a massive increase in value. So the Mission here will get a massive value increase. So Pacific Gardens, this property will be worth a fortune more. So right now it's many industrial, and you have right here the Metro, all their property, all these rail lines will get a bump in equity. So this whole yard, all this land will naturally be appraised at a higher value. And that gives them a bunch of more equity or value to their organization. And what they do with the rail yard is they need to beautify it. So why do rail yards have to be aesthetically unpleasing? They don't. They can make them look well. Even the tracks and everything can be aesthetically, they can incorporate beauty. Architects can get into designing rails, not only functionality, but beauty. Combine functionality and beauty together and make them beautiful. make the trains beautiful. Truly, not only functional, but beautiful. The rails, the rail ties and that add beauty to it. So you can add color, you can add stones of different color, you can add beautiful train lines. The physical tracks in that can be architecturally incredibly beautiful. So think about that. And then they have all this mall and everything waiting down here, which gets underutilized, and all this area will boom. And yes, White Palace will boom. And they could do a deal, White Palace, with the new stadium and open up inside the new stadium. Truly, a White Palace inside the new soccer stadium. And then if they open up the baseball stadium, they can open up a White Palace inside the baseball stadium. Truly, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be, a little, the concession stand, the White Palace concession stand inside the soccer stadium, inside that. So this Metra area, why don't they beautify this? Why doesn't Metra think about how can we make this yard functional and beautiful? And believe me, the employees will feel much better about going to work every day, because visually it will be pleasing to them, and that will give them much more energy, much more vigor. So it's just like the buses in that. I don't understand. You can make them visually beautiful. So here's the river. And you can see right down the river right here. So I'm just doing it from my car, but again, there's great opportunity. And so you can see the site. I wish I could get out, and actually I will get out, and I'll show you a close-up. I'm going to post this on Facebook. But they don't make this visually beautiful. So think about this. If they took this and made this visually beautiful, like see these telephone poles and that? Do you know what they're doing with cell towers now? Cell towers, they're making visually beautiful. So here's all the land. Zoom in and zoom out. And then look at the rail yard. And then you got this river, and you can do a beautification of the river. But the rail yard doesn't have to go. All the rail yard has to do is redesign itself and do a beautification and add greenery. Do you see any green in the rail yard? Any plants, any type of green in the rail yard? The rail yard has no green. Zero, absent. It's just a concrete jungle with metal. They can beautify the rail yard, truly, and add green. And then here, like I said, if you look into what they're doing with cell towers, they're making cell towers incredibly beautiful, aesthetically pleasing, because people don't want the cell towers in their area. And so what did they have to do? They hired architects to make cell towers that look beautiful. So they can do this with telephone poles. Not your same old boring telephone poles, but visually beautiful, so they don't look at them, all these wires and all this. They can add aesthetic beauty. So, and then you have the street right here, which is Clark Street. And so you have this, and then you have that on the other side. So you have tons of land and easily 2 stadiums. So, but why not make it aesthetically beautiful? So change the concept of bus terminals and so on. And I showed you before how they did in, not Venezuela, Argentina. They started making these amazing, beautiful subway stops. I mean, incredibly beautiful. They hired architects to make them aesthetically incredibly beautiful. And this was in Argentina, and they had some, and there's a feature on it you can look up, but they realized that people are in a better mood when they walk into a more beautiful place. Instead of the dingy old subway stops and everything, they started making them incredibly beautiful. So why don't they hire an architect? You have functionality meets beauty. So hire an architect to do that. One engineers to do functionality, and architect to work with them to give it the aesthetic beauty. So give the rail yard a facelift and make it beautiful. Integrate it with the city, making it a work of art, just like any other piece that's in the city, like these buildings and everything. Beautiful. And here's the Roosevelt collection. So again, these areas are going to take a huge, and you're right on top of all of this. So you add the ballpark and the soccer stadium here, and you get unbelievable. This area, you got the new Congress post office that, like I said, should be going into cryptocurrency and swaps and many other things, overnight trading. I mean, that should be expansion of the financial district. It's right off of Wacker Drive right there, the post office, and it integrates right into the financial district. And so we need to expand the financial district. So anyways, this can be unbelievably beautiful. And you have an old bridge over there that's been up forever. And so eventually, are you going to make that into a statue? And that's going to be a historic, and you can paint it and change it, and you don't have to take it down. It could change and become a historical statue. Change the old bridge into a historical monument, and then beautify it and so on. You can add lights to it and that. And now, instead of taking it down, refurbish it, add lights and other aesthetic beauties, and just make it a work of art. Turn this into a work of art. That's one way to go about it. And it adds to the aesthetic beauty of the new stadium. Make it into a huge fountain over the river. You can add into it piping and so on, and it can be a fountain or some just amazing thing. Or it could have all kinds of laser light show or whatever you want. But maybe turn it into an amazing piece of art. And then you got great views. And I like this building, the multicolor up top. But you got really good. And James McHugh, and there's many construction companies that would get into it, and maybe the construction companies come together as a consortium and they fund the job themselves. They can fund the stadium themselves. The construction companies can come in, build out the stadium themselves, issue the bonds, get the revenue, build out the stadium themselves, and they own it. So it's another way. Now they have to do the fundraising and everything, but he did that with Gibson, James McHugh. He built out Gibson's, and he just took ownership. He raised the money, paid for the job, and in turn he got ownership interest in the stadium or in the restaurant, and that generated money. So the construction companies can take a piece of the business if they want. So it's a way to get a partnership if they want. Or if it's strict revenue, that's fine. But also, if they think it's going to be highly profitable, they need money to invest, and meaning they can invest and have a long-time streaming asset for them on their books if they really do think the stadium's going to pay off. So again, Chicago, I think building the one stadium makes it cheaper to build the second stadium. Because if you're going to do the one, you need to build all the infrastructure to accommodate growth. So, again, you do the one stadium and it'll lay the foundation for the White Sox stadium and make it lower cost for the second stadium. So, again, and faster building of the second stadium because you lay all the foundation for the build out of the second stadium. So, again, this can be done. Now, the thing is, you got Lakeshore Drive right ahead. You got the L stop. So all the train stops meet. And here's Roosevelt Collection again. All these properties will boom and they'll be right off stadiums. Now, you have to soundproof. Truly, these residents around here, the windows and everything, you'll have to soundproof them. So the surrounding community, the city has to do an incentive for soundproofing. So those windows and everything, they'd have to do soundproofing so the residents don't get disturbed by the increased noise. Not that they can't design the stadiums right to minimize the outside noise, but they'll have to soundproof the area around it so it doesn't negatively impact the residents. So even when there's games, say there's a night game and they want to enjoy the comfort of their home and everything, they don't really get disturbed on the inside. And they could change maybe to some types of sound barriers. So they have, see these walls right here? These are sound barriers. So they'll have to do these residents. This is going to be a highly trafficked street. So right now it has very little traffic, but this will become a very high trafficked street. So again, these residents here, but what they're going to get is their properties are going to go up significantly in value. Significant in value. And they can integrate the increase in property tax over a 10-year span or something like that, easing it into them. Truly, you don't want to create gentrification, right? So you don't want to force people out of their homes. And then you have Mariano's down here. So, again, all this is going to get a lot more traffic. So, again, they have to think outside the stadium what they're going to do with this area as well. Truly. And this leads right into Chinatown. And it's not far from McCormick Center. So, think about this. You have Chinatown down here. You turn down 18th Street. It says Chinatown straight ahead, but the back way is to go down 18th Street. The main entrance is down Cermak, I think it is up there. But again, you have beautiful right here. The Chinatown has beautiful river right over here. They built out this park and they have the boat races and that, the dragon boat races. And then it's going to be a boom for the Chinese community here because it's in a poor, unbelievable. So the thing is, they're going to have to provide parking accommodations down here. Oh yeah, it's just not up there. They're going to have to, they're going to have higher parking demand. So you can experience before the game or after the game, the soccer stadium and White Sox, you can come and go to Chinatown, both for the soccer stadium and so on. And this will promote soccer within the Chinese community. Truly. And if you're talking about a sport that Chinese are really geared towards, physical-wise, you're talking body size and that, soccer. Much more than basketball and much more than football because of the bone density and muscle and so on and so forth. Not that the NBA is not expanding and won't do well in China and that, but I'm saying that it makes sense for physicality that Asians get involved in soccer. It's a very good sport for Asians to get involved in soccer. It just fits more with their structural makeup. It's not like they can't be a fan of baseball and so on, and there are South Koreans that are big into baseball, but South Koreans are much bigger than, and Mongolians are bigger too. So there are some Asians that are bigger than others. And so Vietnamese and so on, some sports like soccer play very well for Vietnam and others and the Chinese community. So you're looking, that's why soccer is so popular in Latin America and all that, is because it's for a smaller structure. And baseball works very well for Asians as well. Baseball is another. Basketball and football kind of have their restrictions because of size. Truly. But baseball and soccer fit very well into their genetics. So there are some other sports as well, but I'm just saying it's smart with a soccer stadium, and it can embrace soccer within China and within Asia. So it's a smart move. And, and then baseball fits very well into Asia as well. So, again, those two sports naturally fit within their physical makeup, their height and weight and everything else. So it fits very well within. That's why you have baseball in Japan, you have baseball in South Korea, and they're big. It just fits nicely for their frame. So, again, you have Chinatown down here, which will fit in extremely well. And if you want, you can look into the Chinese financing it, that whole expansion, both stadiums. They need to diversify their portfolio, and you still own the land. They can't take the land anywhere, but they can finance the structure or the build-out. So you can go to the Chinese consulate and do a consortium. There's Chinese banks right here. And you got American Metro, you got Pacific Global, you got Cathway, and so on. And then Chase has a big connection into Chinatown, and you can syndicate through the banks, and the banks can raise money, the debt offering in China. Truly. They can do the debt offering and place that debt for offer in China. They would purchase it here, and who would be promoting it? The Chinese community in Chicago. Judy Wang and Nancy Liu and Judy Su and others would be behind it, promoting it to the Chinese community overseas, both in mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, the Asian community. So, again, they can syndicate it, put it over there, and if they believe in this community, it should go fairly quick. And so it gets them outside investment. So, again, there's opportunity, but they have to figure out what they're going to do with the beautification and the road structure and the lighting system. So there's lots of infrastructure and arrangements, like the people that have their houses there and that, they're going to experience heavy traffic. And so they're going to have to go up to State Street and enter through State, because Clark is going to have incredible amounts. Now Clark doesn't have hardly any traffic up here. Truly, people don't use this street much. This is low traffic. I used to live right here, and very few people come in. They come into all these residents, and this building right here where my friend Jeff, they come in via State. They don't come in via Clark. But there are residents up here that are primarily entrants from Clark. So they have to figure out how they're going to make the accommodations with the residents, what time the games are going to be played, and so on, how they're going to deal with traffic flow. So there's a lot of integration with these communities. And the one nice feature about this is that as you move northbound, this gives you access to Upper Roosevelt. So right here, they have access from Roosevelt and entering and exiting to Roosevelt and from Roosevelt. So right here, but it's nice, it goes under. So you have traffic flow that can go under, continue on Clark, but traffic that can go up the Roosevelt and go down to the Kennedy Expressway. So it's only one lane going out, 2 lanes coming in. So this is kind of a bottleneck. So you have more flow going inbound, less flow going outbound. So this is something they'd have to figure out with their infrastructure. And so they got Upper Roosevelt, and that can take a lot of to and flow, but again, you have to figure out how people, where the exit. Now, by Chinatown, there's an exit for the expressway, and so what I'm going to do is get on the expressway up here. So I'm here, I went under Roosevelt, and now I'm going up Clark Street. Now it expands back to 2 lanes. But all these buildings right here, they don't get much traffic. This is a very quiet traffic area. And that's going to change with the stadium. This is going to be a heavily trafficked area. So especially if they put 2 stadiums, so they're going to get immense amount of traffic volume. So they might have to ban all parking on these streets. Truly, they might have to remove parking options on these streets during games. When there are events, you can't park on these streets. So again, they're going to need to figure out parking garages like here. Renovating this parking garage. Truly, adding more parking space so you can empty out the streets. So we're here on Harrison, and I'm going to go up and show you and get on the expressway, but you can't go straight. It dead ends. Look at this. No entrance. Now, if I could go straight, I can enter the Congress right there. Straight. This needs to change, and it needs to go in the other direction. Because right on the other side is Congress, and then I can get on the expressway really quick. Instead, now I have to make a right or left, go around, so I can reach Congress. You don't want that. So you have to reverse this street. So this street, it would be the end of it up there into Congress, and then it would be a one-way going towards. Truly, you would reverse just this section right here, and it would be outbound or northbound. Instead, now it's southbound. And then you have the metro stop right here. So there's big metro station right here. That's right down the street. So you got the train station. Here's the metro station. And then you have 290 right here. And you have the Kennedy Expressway and all of this right here. So, and again, this area won't get much more traffic, but it will be in demand. All this area, this whole new development here, the Grand Central and all this right here, this area, here's the Grand, you can see the Grand Central. There it goes. Kind of have a hard time focusing. But the Grand Central. So this area, all these residents, River City and all this is going to get a big boom. But this is very big recruiting for the downtown district. There's no stadiums like this right off. You got Soldier Field, and they have Bears games, but that's during the winter. That's late fall, winter, and then nothing around here. That brings it into the spring, summer, and fall. Those two stadiums, it brings tons of entertainment and easier to recruit people into these industries that work down here in the financial and other the entertainment district and so on. So again, here's the project. This is the Congress Expressway when I'm talking. So if you reverse that street and make it northbound, it empties into Congress, and they can go right on here. And here's the new post office, or old post office, which right there's the financial district, and it's right on the river. And this should be an expansion of the financial district. Truly, all kinds of offices, overnight trading in the futures market, the swaps, overnight in the options and everything else. I mean, all the overnight markets and so on, expanding the financial district. And then you got the Wisconsin, you got Indiana, and you got 290 to Aurora and other places. So right now we're going to Indiana. So once they're on Congress, they're coming down this way, but I'll show you, I'm going to do the loop and go backwards. And as I'm getting, extreme tailgated again. But again, that's the garbage of Chicago, right? If Chicago wants to be a class act, they got to get rid of the garbage. So, again, garbage in, garbage out. So what do? Get rid of the garbage, and you don't have any garbage out because there's no garbage in. So the garbage goes bye-bye. I'm all about getting rid of the trash. So this goes up to Roosevelt, but we're not going to go up to Roosevelt. So doing the loop, they'll be going back to down this way. They'll be going back to 18th Street, which is right up here, and that's the entrance for Chinatown. So I'm going under Roosevelt right now. This is Roosevelt that passed over. Roosevelt goes into Clark. Clark and Roosevelt is where the new stadiums will be. So this is UIC. So, and the old stadium is at Toyota Park, and I think University of Chicago can take over the old stadium and use that for their sporting events. So here is 18th Street. So they can get off at 18th Street is another way to get to the stadium. So that you can get off at Roosevelt or you can get off at 18th Street. Truly. And then coming back the other way, they can get off at Chinatown. And so, again, another terrorist. There, we're going to go right into the red light. Smile for the camera. You're going to jail, you fucking piece of fucking trash. May they burn in hell. Truly. Let's throw the guy through the tree shredder. Hey, Saddam did it all the time, and he threw hundreds of people. It's highly effective. Grind them up, spit them out. So you got to get rid of the trash. That's what the church was supposed to do. The church was supposed to do a great purge, cleansing the filth out of society. But now they embrace the filth. They embrace the LGBTQ, all the filthy, disgustful, the sinners. The church has become the home of Satan. Everybody that's putrid is in the church. It makes me sick. They can't be in the church. They need to excommunicate and get rid of them. It should be harder than hell to get into church. It's easy to get into hell. Be wicked. It's always easy to be wicked. It takes no brains to be like that person behind me. It takes no brains to be wicked. They need to do the purge in the church. The church needs to get back to what Jesus did. Either you repent or you're condemned. The disciples all repented. Judas never did. He was condemned. It's that simple. And Jesus told them, either repent or die forever. And that's what they should tell them. Either repent or die forever. There is no room for you, you piece of filth. So either we break you or you perish. So you got a choice. Either you get broken or you perish. But there's no room for you filth. So let's go up this way. And it's true, there's no room for the filth. There is no exception. There is no room. So start kicking them out. Don't be nice. Be ruthless. Don't tolerate. It's a failed experiment. It is. The black church has tolerated all this in Chicago. And what did they get? The murder capital in Gary, the murder capital in Chicago, the murder capital in D.C., because the black church has always tolerated the scum. And all they got is more scum. So, garbage in, and the garbage grows. You get rid of the garbage, and the garbage shrinks. Zero tolerance. No more filth. No more filth. So, pieces of garbage. And then you try to apply pressure on me. We're going to take you away from a girlfriend. We're going to destroy your financials. We're going to desecrate your body. It doesn't change my stance like these freaking pieces of pig cops. I mean, unbelievable corruption in the Chicago Police Department. Oh yeah, the cover-up with Mayor Daley's nephew, hit and killed. All those cops on division covered up the murder. Covered it up. How disgraceful they are. Great purge. Every cop goes on the polygraph. Everything gets drilled down, their financials, their background. And you get rid of the scum in the department. Truly, you drill down and get rid of them. Zero tolerance. So, again, here is where the river is. Right here. You can see right down it. And that's where the new stadium will be. But, again, tolerance has not worked. The LGBTQ has exploded. Abortion exploded. Murder, rape, everything explode. Because it's all about tolerance. It's not about tolerance. Again, you misunderstand. Jesus wasn't tolerant. Paul gave up everything. All of them gave up everything. He didn't say, hey, Paul, go out and continue to kill. Paul had to give it up. All of them had to give it up. Jesus had a zero tolerance policy. A zero tolerance policy. I don't know what Bible you're reading, but Jesus had a zero tolerance policy. Zero. That's why Judas burned in hell. Zero tolerance. That's why he offed himself and he burned in hell. It's a zero tolerance policy. So read the Bible correct. It's a zero tolerance policy. All those people gave it up immediately. They became sin-free. Zero tolerance. So I'm coming back up again, and I'll finish this off going back by the stadium. But you can see how 18th Street and all this fits in. And I'm not bipolar, but I want to get back to my normal topic. So again, just to make it clear, Jesus had a zero tolerance policy. He was not tolerant. He had a zero tolerance policy. No one around him could repeat their sin. Zero tolerance. And the one who did burned in hell forever. Zero tolerance. So these bums have to go. Zero tolerance. So again, Jesus had a ministry of zero tolerance. Read Michael Yaconelli's book, Messy Spirituality. All of them changed. Zero tolerance. If you're going to follow me, you must wipe out all your sin. Zero tolerance. So, you're not reading the Bible correctly. Jesus had a zero tolerance policy. So, here's the river. We're back up on the stadium. And then I'll show you right down the park the train line. So again, the Roosevelt, Target, all this, that lease, that property, if Target owns it, it's worth a ton more. Even the lease they're currently in is worth a lot more if that gets developed. But you don't understand. It's zero tolerance. And I keep on telling you what it is, and you keep on thinking it's different from what I'm saying. It is not different from what I'm saying. You can go about whatever you want, but you're going to end up being put to waste. So it's a zero tolerance policy. So either you go with God, as my Muslim friends say all the time to me, go with God. Go with Michael. God sent. But anyways, here are the train lines right here and the Roosevelt exit. But there's also an exit in Chinatown. So if you're coming from the north side, you would get off at Roosevelt. If you're coming from the south side, you would want them to get off at Chinatown. You don't want them to get off at the same exit. So the south side exits at Chinatown, the north side exits at Roosevelt to minimize the flow. Even for Soldier Field, they should be getting off at Chinatown, 18th Street, not Roosevelt. So the south side should exit Chinatown, 18th Street, park over there, go to the Bears Stadium. Others from the north side can exit at Roosevelt. So split the city, truly. And then others that live on the east side, they take Lakeshore Drive. And so they don't really have to go far. But they're coming from the south, they get off Lakeshore Drive at 18th Street, and they park around McCormick Center and that. And then the other north side, they get off here at Roosevelt or further down on Roosevelt and park around there from the north. So you want to end up minimizing congestion by managing the traffic right. And so we'll go into downtown. I mean, we'll go into Soldier Field up here and Northerly Island and everything. So this is all right up from where they're building, but this is becoming a very big entertainment district. This is becoming a significant entertainment district with Grant Park and the music concerts and the concerts at Soldier Field, and then the Shedd Aquarium and the museum and the planetarium, and then you have the harbor out here. I forget what it's called, the harbor right here. But this is becoming a huge entertainment district. What is a convention? It's an entertainment. People come down to learn. It's an educational event, but it's entertainment. And they come down for the speakers like the TED Talk. Oh yeah, we can have a TED Talk convention. We can have in Chicago a TED Talk convention where all the different TED Talks have a convention. It's not to do the TED Talks. It's about all the vendors and everything for all the TED Talks that happen around the country. And this is a vendor, the back of the house, the camera crews, the people that write the scripts and provide the content and distribute the marketing and all the stuff for TED Talk. We can have a YouTube convention here. And we can have the International Search Engine Convention here. So we can have a international YouTube convention in Chicago. YouTube convention for all the providers on YouTube that come to Chicago, the content providers that come to Chicago, and we have a big McCormick Place YouTube convention. Truly. Or it could be social media convention in Chicago. All the content providers and vendors for social media. So it could be all social media platforms then. Or you can have a YouTube convention and a total social media convention, but you can't have them at the same time. So they have to be 1 year is one and then another year is another, but you want them a couple years apart. So the YouTube convention, like the Olympics, every 4 years, say, you have the big YouTube content provider convention, and then you get the social media convention. So every 2 years, the social community, the social media convention, and then 2 years later, the YouTube convention. And then 2 years later after that, the social media convention. So you stagger them 2 years apart like the Olympics did. Because remember, they came every 4 years and they were longer apart. Now the Olympics is every 2 years. They're still 4 years apart, but 2 years the winter, then 2 more years the summer, but they're 4 years apart. So we're down here and you're in Museum Park. So this is becoming one big entertainment district. And you have Northerly Island, and you have all the boats and everything. And so you have this right here. So you see this right here. So you have the Field Museum, the Shedd Aquarium, the Adler Planetarium, Northerly Island. And like I said, Northerly Island should be part of Lollapalooza, and so should Soldier Field. But if they open up the 2 more stadiums, we can expand Lollapalooza into the Sox Stadium and into the soccer stadium concerts. Just making Lollapalooza bigger. More vendors to expand. Truly. So the concert and the groups and the super acts that it provide can grow. Can grow. So those new stadiums give growth to Lollapalooza. Instead, they were landlocked in Grant Park. Now they can incorporate the other stadiums and expand. So they can get way bigger, bring in super acts, Beyonce and many other super acts at the same time. Truly. And so it's a totally different Lollapalooza, where they have the Grant Park, but then they also have the super acts in the surrounding venues, because they're going to fill out the Soldier Field and everything else, while other people are still. So you have to buy up for the super acts. So you get the base concert that's at Grant Park, and then you can get the super acts and buy up. And so it's different. So again, you would get the super acts, and you would have different levels. You have your standard or base package. You could call the bronze package. Then you have the silver package, the gold, and then the platinum package. And the platinum package, you time the main acts both in Grant Park and then in the venues to be at different times, so they can see the super acts and then the main acts in Grant Park, so they can float. And what do? You set up a trolley system and everything to move in between. So again, this is becoming a massive entertainment district. But the thing is, it doesn't have the restaurants up here to support it. Truly. It doesn't have the culinary to support it. So, like at Field Museum, why isn't Grant Elkins or Rick Bayless opening up a restaurant? Our top chefs in Chicago, my friend Rick, he can open up an Asian fusion restaurant, right? And so the Shed Aquarium in that should think about getting award-winning chefs and gourmet, high-end culinary integrated. And I'm not saying the other stuff goes away, but you can have gourmet hot dogs and gourmet Polish sausage and that, and you integrate the base with a higher-end gastro experience. So they need to include this in the Shed, and it makes things to go to. And you have the higher end dining like at the Chicago. Let me go down here just a little bit on the other side of Grant Park, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. And so you get the other side of Grant Park up here, and you get the Chicago Art Institute, the Modern Museum of Art, and all this. This is all in a small area, literally a mile by a mile. It's a mile square area. Truly, this is literally 1 mile by 1 mile by 1 mile. So it's a box about 4 square. It's 4 square miles around. So this is becoming a mega entertainment complex. If you bring those 2 new stadiums there, this becomes a mega entertainment complex. And like I said, bringing over the Museum of Science and Industry up here, and have the University of Chicago take over and bring the History Museum there, and bring the Museum of Science and Industry up here. So this cements this as this truly is becoming a world-renowned entertainment area. Now, it doesn't have the culinary, and it doesn't have the cafes. It needs cafes, street cafes. You can hang out night and day, cafes. And then if you want lounges, you don't need nightclubs, but you can have high-end lounges where they play jazz. And Chicago, like Buddy Guy's would get an upgrade. It's right here, Buddy Guy Legend. And so that's blues and, Chicago rhythms, the jazz, and so on. So, again, this is all very close. Here's Buckingham Fountain, and this is Congress. So, this is minutes away from each other. So, and these hotels will get an immense boom, but this has never been marketed as a package, as an entertainment district. No one's ever looked at this as an entertainment district, but this is becoming a mega entertainment district. Now, the farther down, you have smaller ones like the Gold Coast and so on, but that's for shopping and everything. The Gold Coast has all the high-end shopping and some culinary, but this you would build out. It has all the hotels, and it has all the museums, and it has the Chicago Yacht Club, which is right here, and then the other harbor right there at right next to Soldier Field. So there's 2 big boat harbors right here. And then you have the different museums. Let me go up a little further. Right up here. And so this is all on this side. There's a like a cutoff through the railroad and everything. You go under here. This whole section is a huge entertainment. You have big hotels in the Chicago rivers over there and all kinds of boat cruises. And you got Navy Pier and North Pier. It's all part of it. You have Maggie Daley Park and Millennium Park. So, and then you got the Modern Art Institute. This is becoming an incredible entertainment district. But they need to further enhance the restaurant offering, the lounges, the cafes. Truly, to build this out as a world-renowned experience where people will want to come here from all over the world and experience this incredible entertainment complex. But you also, in the venues, you have to schedule out when the Sox are going to be in town, when the soccer team is going to be in town. Sometimes you might want them both in town at the same time, but not all the time. So you have to offset so you fill that area all the time. So the Sox are playing on certain days, and then the soccer team is playing on certain days. Not the same day. So you're spreading them out. So it's like the United Center. The Bulls are playing one day, the next day the Hawks are playing. They don't play series in basketball. They don't play series in hockey. Unlike baseball, they come in town and you have a 5-game or 2-game or 3-game series. They don't do that in basketball. They don't do that in hockey. So they play one game and then they leave. In baseball, you come in town and the Brewers will be here for a 3-game series, a weekend series. They stay in town. You have a Friday, Saturday, Sunday game. So it operates differently in baseball. Totally different. And so, again, they have series. But the United Center needs to figure out, you have the Hawks when, you have the Bulls when, and then what are you going to do in between, like Disney on Ice and other things to fill up the calendar to keep people in the area to consistently have a steady flow of business where you don't have these long lags in between events where there's a lot of downtime and the businesses suffer. And what happens? They have to hire, then they have to go down on staff, and then they have to hire more because they're gearing up for the events, and then they gear down. And so you have this too much fluctuation. But if you plan out with Soldier Field, truly, Venetian Night at the Chicago Yacht Club is a big event, and many others, you can steadily fill. The museum when you have, and down here, you have the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, you have the Lyric Opera that's up on Wacker, you have the Theater District. And so they have to figure out when these things are offered and the accommodations, working with the hotel. This has to be one big organization working together. It has to be these joint associations meeting and syncing up everything and working in synchronicity so the money just keeps on flowing. The events, the activities, they just keep on flowing. There's no left. So, anyways, here's the Art Institute. So when are they going to have the big thing? I came down the King Tut exhibit. People poured in here for the King Tut exhibit. That was huge. And then they had, I think the Field Museum had Body Works, but the King Tut exhibit was huge. And so, again, this area here, and then you have all the universities. Do you know what this is going to do for Roosevelt, Robert Morris, Columbia College of Chicago, CCC, Columbia College of Chicago, the Triple C, CCC, Columbia College of Chicago. So it's going to be incredible for students to go to school and live down here. So they need to figure out college life. They have to have a campus life, and they're going to make an incredible campus life because they can play softball, they can go boating, they can do all kinds of things. They can go to all kinds of baseball and soccer events and football events and concerts. Lollapalooza and that. They're going to summer school at Roosevelt University. They're down staying in Chicago for the summer. And they get to go to Lollapalooza and the movies in the park and all of that. So it